Okay, here we go. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Colleen Call. I'll be moderating today's panel, and we'll be talking about an incredibly important and very timely topic: BIPOC experiences in tech. BIPOC meaning Black and Indigenous persons of color experiences in tech. What we'll be talking about is what people experience, what we call under the rug. Specifically, we'll be diving into issues like bias representation and the need for strong allies in the cloud native space. So, we'll explore not only the challenges we face, but also actionable ways that we can all help create a more inclusive and diverse tech industry. Now, I'm enjoyed. I'm joined today by a group of incredible panelists, some old friends, not too old, some new friends, Marina Ujay, Adriana Viela, Courtney Nickerson, Will I Am Rizzo, and my new friend, Mark Campbell Vincent. We'll share our personal stories and perspectives, and so we'll just get into it. Before we start, I just want to make sure that you guys know what is going on with the scheduled panel conversation, which is 60 minutes. We'll start with the intro, personal journeys of the panel, and then move on to a few topics and Q&A during and toward the end. So, before we dive into that conversation, I want to quickly share some eye-opening statistics, recent developments with D&I within the tech industry. So, policy shifts. This shouldn't be strange to most people who are dealing with current events. The US government has enacted an executive order directing federal agencies and contractors to eliminate diversity, equity, inclusion policies. Corporate decisions. Major tech companies, including Meta and Microsoft, have recently scaled back or eliminated their DEI programs. And according to some reports from McKinsey and Company the last 3 years and the 2023 tech report, 63% of employees in the US tech sector are white. 20% identify as Asian American, 8% Hispanic or Latino, and 7% as Black. So, with all that information and statistics, we're going to start by asking the panel to share their personal journeys into the tech industry. Think about what sparked their interest in tech, what were some of the challenges that you encountered along the way, and particularly as a person of color. So, who wants to go first? Or I can pick one of my friends. Let's start with Marino.
How did I know?
I knew it too.
So my tech journey has been very interesting, and thank you all for being a part of this panel too. I started my career probably well over 20 years ago, and one of the very recurring themes that I noticed right up front was how brown people, like people of my skin tone, were boxed into this idea of being in tech, right? If you are Indian or I'm of Sri Lankan descent, but if you're of that color, it's automatically assumed that you're going to be in tech and you're going to be of some kind of position that does a lot of engineering work, right? And there's an automatic assumption that you're also somewhat smart. I'm not that smart, but I can navigate my way around tech. But something that was very interesting throughout my career that I noticed was how job applications were handled. And I'll be a little vulnerable here. I actually underwent a name change probably about 10 years ago. One that just adjusted my last name, it shortened it, and also shifted around my middle name to my first name. And there was a reason for that. It was because I noticed that when I was applying to jobs, my original traditional name usually got passed up pretty quickly. And that sucked because as someone that has worked really hard throughout their career, especially in school, to land some really good opportunities, the name was always one that affected my opportunity or affected my ability to gain that opportunity. So I'll give you a good example. There was one time where I submitted my resume with my original name and then my resume with my current name, Marino. Guess which one got picked? exact same resume, right? And that was very eye-opening to me in the sense that, folks out there that are hiring prefer someone that didn't sound like they're from another country. What's also interesting is there were times where I would hop on calls with interviewers, hop on calls with end users, and they would be surprised to see how well spoken I am, for the fact that I didn't have an accent. And I'd question them and be like, why would I have an accent? I was born in Canada. I learned English as I was growing up from the moment I grew up. Yes, I understand a little bit of Tamil, but I don't really speak it. uh, but why would you assume that I wouldn't know how to speak fluently in English? And they'd be taken aback, and they'd probably try and backtrack a little bit and say, hey, I didn't mean it like that. And I'd kind of sit there and wonder, like, what's really going on in your mind there? Because I am just another individual out here who is trying to make their way through tech. And to kind of see that level of, I'd call it microaggression, was kind of hurtful early on in my career. Um, I've since gotten past that because I've worked really hard to build a bit of a brand for myself and build up my community and just really make a lot of different like connections throughout my life. And people start to realize, like, despite the fact that my heritage, my parents were from Sri Lanka, that doesn't really change me as an individual. I still offer up the same level of capability, the same level of drive. I still do things. I still get stuff done. I don't want to use any swear words here, but I still work to get stuff done, and I move things and make things happen, right? But I still feel that as I go along my career, I still feel that folks out there might assume that I'm Indian. I'm not Indian, for one. And that I tend to align to certain cultures and certain practices and the way things are done, but that's not really the case. I grew up here in Canada. I was born here, and not to say that there's anything wrong with Sri Lanka or anything like that, but it's just the way I grew up. And it just makes me realize, like, how tough it is out there for others like me that have to endure working through their careers using their own traditional names, trying to get the right job or the right fit. But it is something that still happens today. That's a little bit of my story and my background there.
Okay, let's move on to Courtney.
Great. Hi, thank you. Thanks for sharing all of that, Marina. It's a lot to digest and follow, actually. So I am originally from the US. I now live in Europe, in Spain. I was born in the state of New Mexico. The number of times I've heard people say, "Oh, you don't look Mexican," or "Your English is really good," and that's just at the state level. It's been insane. But it's interesting to follow Marino talking about people assuming that he's Indian, because my experience and surroundings of heritage is actually oftentimes referred to as Indian, but is actually an indigenous movement. It's Native American, right? And so there's already a stigma around that. Most people don't even refer to Native Americans or natives in general with the correct terminology. But not just that, when we're talking about statistics, oftentimes Indigenous folks aren't even considered. So there are Indigenous people in like 90 countries around the world. And the representation of Indigenous peoples in technology is less than 1%. That's absolutely mind-boggling. I was looking at those statistics as I was preparing for this, just to kind of see what other people's experiences are. As much as Marina went through a name change, my name sounds incredibly white. My mom is. My dad, however, is a bunch of different things that make him a much browner skin tone. Throughout my entire life, but also my journey in tech, people are like, well, you don't look like there's anything brown about you. Your name doesn't sound that way. And so oftentimes it's difficult to fit in both worlds, the world that I apparently look a lot more like and sound a lot more like, and however have had different upbringings and experiences, as well as the world of other underrepresented groups, because everybody just assumes that I don't actually belong in that group. And then on the other side, I grew up in a place that's 10 minutes from the Navajo reservation. There are reservations across the United States. But the reality is that most homes on the reservation are still struggling to have running water and electricity, let alone cloud technology. I had no idea this world even existed. So my journey into tech didn't start 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I was just starting to connect to Ethernet in university. My mind was blown at how fast that was, because my entire experience of anything connected online was a dial-up modem at the public library, which was pretty much the only place that you could even get online where I was living and growing up. So I didn't even know this world existed until about 6 or 7 years ago. So my learning journey and the learning curve is just insane sometimes. And I've been incredibly lucky to come across individuals who have been very helpful and share their information, and the community aspect in specifically the cloud native space has been incredibly helpful. But one experience I had at a conference, actually, I was speaking with Sal Kimmich, and I idolize this woman. She is very proud of her Native American heritage. She's incredibly proud of it, as she should be. And I remember I was very much fangirling, and somebody said, "Oh, you don't look Native." Like, just straight up is like, "But you're blonde. You don't look. There's nothing that looks indigenous about you." And her response was very subtle. She was like, "Well, thank you for your observation," and then continued on with the conversation we were having. But those assumptions that people make it really difficult for some of us to embrace our heritage and our identity, just from our own natural standpoint. My entire life, I've very much, my mom is blonde haired and blue eyed. My dad is a totally different, much darker skin tone of black hair. And I'd get picked up from school by my mom. Nobody ever questioned that she was my mother. If I get picked up from school by my dad, everybody was like, "Who's that brown guy?" And that has very much translated into every industry I've worked in, as including tech. And that is a difficult thing to wrap your head around, and for this particular panel, I was very hesitant to actually join, to even have this conversation, because it's like I am aware that there's already a concept that I don't look like somebody who would belong here. And I'm also aware that there are a lot of people who have indigenous heritage and backgrounds, and they will pass it off as being something else, because the representation in this space is so low, and the stigmas placed upon embracing that heritage at all are incredibly high. And so you spend most of your time actually explaining any connection you have to a heritage, rather than talking about your accomplishments or your resume or things that you'd like to learn, which there's a certain aspect of that educational part that is incredibly important. But also there's a certain moment where you go, how many more times am I going to have to repeat this? And how many more times am I going to get questioned if I actually belong in this space? And how many more times are people going to tell me that I don't look like? And so I think those types of perceptions, comments are things that, as time goes on, hopefully, even if we continue to be an underrepresented group of individuals in this space, hopefully people will stop having such extreme assumptions about somebody's background or heritage, and will just be open to having an open conversation, understanding where they are coming from.
Yeah, that's very good points. And we've have urban guitar legend who posted, "Assumptions are interstate things." That's a very profound statement to say. And as far as percentages, according to the 2023 Tech Report. When I was I was reading the percentage of employees in the U.S. tech sector, 1%, less than 1%, as Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, or Native American. So I just wanted to make that clear to everyone. Let's move on to Mark Campbell Vincent. Hey, Mark.
Good. Hello. Thanks, everyone, for having me. What I'm hearing from Marina and Courtney, like this underlying theme of preconceptions of how you're perceived by people, it does resonate with me. My story begins in New Jersey. I come from a predominantly urban community, and I've always had uh, a niche for being able to solve things, just scratching that itch, trying to understand how things work. And I've always liked computers, but it was only until my cousin, who's a computer science technology teacher in urban communities, that really pushed me to take that into action. And being young and not listening to your elders, you're like, I'll think about it. But deep down, I listened and I took that on, and I was like, you know what, I'll go on and go to university and see how it works. And she was completely surprised, like, wow, you do listen. But but yeah, one thing that I noticed when I was actually taking the core comp sci tech courses were these preconceptions of why I was there, and it didn't seem like I was supposed to be there. And that's where really imposter syndrome kicked in, because unfortunately it can be a very predominantly white industry, and just the community there at my university a few years ago weren't always as diverse. And so that's one thing I did notice. And going into the workforce, I started to notice that pattern as well. And I think the preconceptions came with that as well. And I think that's one thing that I always kept in the back of my mind. And it really didn't bother me or affect me until I started to see how I would get passed on things, or opportunities weren't as accessible, not just because of that, but also I wasn't as aware, or I wasn't as vocal. And I think that comes with being aware and having that community and having that sense of community there. So I've been in the tech industry for roughly 6 to 7 years, and I think that overall I've always started to notice that there are these barriers when it comes to how people perceive you, where those opportunities lie, and being able to find that sense of community to make sure that you can vocalize how you feel, and to have more of that sense of belonging so that you can make a difference. So overall, yes, the preconceptions can definitely be a limitation. And I think that overall, having this sense of platform and having that community can really help make sure that more people feel like they are included and have that sense of community. Yeah.
No, thanks, Mark. I mean, there's some really interesting points going through by listening to your journeys of hearing not looking the part, how you're perceived, not being vocal enough. That's why I think it's important for people like you all to, when we go to these events or when we're in the Slack communities, to just show up to make sure that people know you're here and we're not going anywhere. So with that in mind, let's start with Adriana Viela, who is awesome with her podcast, Geeking Out, one of my favorites. And Marina, you have to tell us more about your new podcast as well. But Adriana, please.
Yeah. It's interesting. I love hearing everyone's stories. So I am originally from Brazil. I live in Canada right now. I'm an immigrant. I've been in tech for 24 years, and I got into tech because of my dad. He is of the time of punch cards, and has been one of those people who just like evolved with the times. He's 70 and learned Rust for fun, and now creates his own Rust crates,
Wow.
which have had a fair number of downloads for someone who's known Rust for 2 years. So that's my background. Now it's it's interesting hearing Courtney's story, because fun fact, in Brazil I'm considered white, in Canada I'm not, which is really interesting. People's perceptions of that. And like I moved to Canada when I was 10, but I probably don't have an obvious accent when I speak, because I learned English when I was 3, when my family was living in the States. And when we moved back to Brazil for a bit, my parents insisted that my sister and I speak English at home. Both my parents learned English at an early age. And they insisted that we speak English at home and go to English speaking schools so as to not lose our accents. Because for my mom, who had an accent when she spoke English, it was so important for us to not have accents, because there's so much bias that comes from having an accent, unfortunately. And she experienced so many of those biases herself when she was alive. So it's really interesting thinking about that. The other thing, I was thinking back to like Marino talking about his name. So for the longest time, when I lived living here in Canada, I used to go by Adriana when telling people my name, but I've in more recent years have tried to embrace more of the Portuguese pronunciation of my name, so going by Adriana instead, because I've realized that I've been living in Canada for 35 years, and living here for so long, I'm kind of caught between these two cultures, right? I have been basically raised in a North American culture, but I have this Brazilian heritage that I almost forgot about, because we were it's just the 4 of us living here. The rest of my extended family's in Brazil. For a while there, it's like we lost that culture. And then as I've had grandparents die and whatnot, it's been so much more important to hold on to that culture and really embrace it. So that's why now I go by Adriana, and it's okay if you can't pronounce it. But if you try, that's cool. I appreciate that. The other thing that I wanted to mention is, for a while, so I have this blog on Medium. And for a while, when I started it in 2020, I was like, oh, I don't want to like put my name on it. So I went by Adri instead of Adriana, on my like putting my author name on there. And because I wanted it to be ambiguous on purpose. Is that a guy? Is it a girl? Especially because like my blog is a technical blog. So I thought, well, people won't take me seriously talking about technical things if they know it's coming from a girl. And it's interesting how we have those perceptions around, like, oh, you're a girl and you're doing technical talks. Like I once was at a meetup giving a technical talk, and talking to someone beforehand, before the meetup started. And this guy comes up to me. He's like, so are you like in marketing? I'm like, no, I'm a developer. And he kept like asking more and more questions that just like got his foot further into his mouth. And I'm like, would you just, dude, please stop, because you're like embarrassing yourself. Like the amount of prejudice coming out of this guy's mouth was like unbelievable. So stuff like that makes you like it made me so aware that I am a woman in tech, which for me, to be honest, like when I started, like I have an engineering degree, it was such a point of pride to me to be like, oh, I'm like a girl in a sea of guys, this is awesome. And then I started work and it's like, I'm a girl in a sea of guys, this is awesome, until I realized I'm like, there's no representation. There's like no other girls on my team. And I became painfully aware of my gender when I took started taking on more leadership roles, and I started getting crap from guys who were like taking orders from a girl, which like I don't know, like that was, I think, the most hurtful moment of my career, is this realization, the I'm a girl realization, and that like it's working against me. And so as a final note, I do want to say, ever since I started working with folks in the CNCF, it's been amazing, because I feel like this is such a diverse crew, and I've actually met more people who look like me in the last little while than at any point, like I would say in the last 2-3 years, than at any point in my 24-year tech career. So representation matters. Meeting other people who look like you really, really matters, and elevating people, using your privilege to elevate people who aren't seen, really, really matters. And I think this is why this panel is so important.
Yes, that's awesome. I'm amazed at these personal stories, so I want to continue, and then we can dive into some of the challenges that you do face in the workplace, similar to what Ariana had mentioned. So, Will, you're up next. As he takes a
Yeah,
drink.
there you go. Of course.
Sorry about that.
You timed it.
Yes, I
Um,
did.
well, I everything that I heard so far, it resonates so much, and of course we all think that somehow our problem is unique. But right now, I felt like what Marino said about the name. I felt, of course, Courtney, Mark, absolutely. I feel like he went through what I was going through, but I I I do not know really how in the States you guys experience it. When I say I don't know, I mean I have not felt it in my skin, right? I can tell you where I grew up. Where I grew up is still sometimes quite discriminatory, not to say plain racist place, and I had to go through. I had to go through biting a lot of dust a lot of times to get where I wanted to be, and obviously fall short a little bit. Right, that's the place where I want to be. I'm just here, and that's and I'm just falling short, and um, but the the thing is that I didn't have that experience, and that's also maybe I wish I had that experience of Marino of his name, right? It's
Yeah.
very important. I mean, he sends out a CV. His name is what it is, and that CV is going to be scored differently just because the name. It's not even before reading the skill set, right? Even before reading the experience, whatever. That's just the name. I didn't have that because my name it's an English name and an Italian last name. So my father was an is mixed Ethiopian and Italian, but he's an immigrant in Italy, and my mother is fully Eritrean, so that makes me a quarter Italian. Um, the 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 reason why my name is English is because at the registration of my name, the person that needed to register my name, that was an African name that my mother wanted to give me because she's African, that person could not spell it. So, and my mother, being an immigrant mother, she did great things, but she knew what she knew. She couldn't read or write, so she said she switched to the next name that she knew, that it was William, and that person could spell William, and so wrote William. So that's why I didn't have the same experience as Marino. So I was lucky on that side. But the problem is that when I would show up at the interview, that long time ago, you would actually be in person, not online. So the I could see and I could sense, and some of you might know exactly what I mean. I could see the look and I could sense the the that's something. It was not gonna fly my way. Let's put it that way. Um, and and to be honest, that's maybe what you don't expect me to say. Um, I actually liked it. I actually liked to be. It was painful, but I liked to be discriminated. I liked it. I liked it to be treated differently because I was different. I was better. I was better in everything. So I need to be treated differently. So all those experiences that I had with those individuals, those organizations, just made me better at what I am and what I do, and made me work harder. All the time, made me work harder. Um, but I don't want that to happen for my kids, right? I don't want this experience to go on for my kid. So somehow we are parents. We feel stronger. We feel like we can take it, but my kids don't need to take it, right? Um, I also was part of some groups, of course, right? And in my life, some friends, some sport groups, and whatever. And what I heard something that before from Courtney, um, about belonging to the community, right? It's something that you all said somehow. Um, I thought I always thought that also me, I want to be in a group. I want to, but like I said before, I want to be here, and that here is work success or friendship or relationship, whatever. That here is whatever you put in your mind, but it's a belonging, right? But in reality, there is where we want to be and where we are embraced. So there is the community that we want to be in, but there is also the community that embraces and celebrates our differences, if there are any of such differences, right? There is that community that says, "Hey, yeah, come around. Who are you? And really, you are Native American? Whoa, tell me about it. I want to know. I don't know anything about it. I want to know it." I mean, I, I tell you, yeah, you don't look Native American, not because I expect you to be different, but just because, wow, you are not like me. So tell me all there is to know about what you are. I want to know all about you. So that's the difference, right? So the what I gather also from what you say and from what I think is that there is a difference that I still like, that our business card is our appearance. Our business card is our name, yeah, like Marino, or is our accent. So before we get to actually talk about what we might want to talk about to get that job or to be successful, we have to get our business card accepted. Whereas someone someone else will put on the nice dress or the nice suit, uh, and will say, "Yeah, I passed the business card part." We don't. We have to go through the appearance, and of course, we are people that like our hair to have a certain look. We want to look in a certain way. We want to wear glasses that are in a certain way. We it's part of our culture to be that way. So when somebody says, "Oh, I love your hair," or "Your hair looked cool," that they they don't see that as a microaggression. We know that is a microaggression. Um, what I think is, how much are we willing to walk further after the microaggression, or how much energy do we want to spend to address it? I think that's the only balance, right? Um, but yeah, that's this all this. I think this is all I want to say, Colleen. It's before I cry. No, I'm not crying. I'm joking.
No, this is good. And you brought up a really good point about how far you go to assimilate into what is the majority of, honestly, just white male culture, if you want to call it that, just to prove yourself. And quickly, just since I'm the only Black woman on the panel and I am moderator, so that I will slip in a few things about myself, but I don't come from the tech space. I come from hospitality, and I loved it. I come from a bunch of uh, fields like healthcare or and again, like hospitality. But when I came into the tech space, I did think it was one of the most welcoming. I didn't have to know everything, but I did have the opportunity to learn. But still, I'm constantly having to prove myself, especially because I'm tech media, I'm in marketing, I'm in event planning, that people still don't believe that I know what the heck I'm talking about. No matter how many things that I post on social media to prove that I do. Well, she must have had help. And that's hard every day. And I'm over 50. I'm quite tired of it, but I have to have this mindset that doesn't bother me anymore. Because sometimes people back in the day, people did accept that and they made you your pet. And then after you do something amazing and prove yourself, you become a threat. So that's been my um, experience, journey, being a Black woman in the tech space. The good news is that having people like you to share these experiences and watch you grow and not have that negative mindset to just keep moving, because one of these days you'll be surprised, and it's because of what you've done. It's all because of you, and you decided to push forward, because I was just tired of being negative and hating. So, but again, with that in mind, moving on, since we shared our personal journeys, let's focus on, do we need to prove ourselves? And if we decide to go another route, how can we help or teach or help tech companies foster better representation and just, try and build pathways for us to do better, really. And anybody can take it.
Can I
Sure.
try?
Yeah.
Please.
I don't know how companies can involve us more, and I don't know if I want to, and if I don't know if I want them to. Uh, I know, I know, I know, I know. I told you you're not gonna like me.
Nice.
The what I know is that I know about my experience. I know what worked, what I did that worked when I was extremely loud, up close and personal, all these things. What I want is to uh, grab as many like me as possible, and I'm not talking about people of my color and people of my gender. I'm talking about people that feel that they have to work harder to achieve what they want to achieve, and work harder with them, and show them and put them on the stage of whatever it is that they want to do, and what or they want to achieve, and give them, not, I'm not saying coaching, but help them out to achieve what they want to achieve, and to be as loud as possible. The organization, if if the culture in an organization is a culture that is not inclusive, we're not going to change it from outside. But they might change it from the inside if once those people that have been coached to, they come in, they might start making the noise to change it. And again, going back to the point before, if a community is not welcoming you, maybe it's not the community where you want to be in the first place. So
Good point.
it's
Very well
If I
said.
may add, I would say, like, for me personally, like, one of the things that I tried to do when I was in that kind of a position, like when I was a manager and hiring people into my team, I always made a point of making sure that we had a diverse group of people on the team. Because what I've always found is my most successful teams were always the ones where it wasn't like a homogeneous team, right? Because that way, like, the one thing we all have in common is our differences, and it's always such a treat to be able to, like, learn from different backgrounds and cultures. But it sometimes it can be, like, very daunting, because it feels like sometimes all this falls on top of you. So it can't be just you hiring diverse people in your organization. I think it's making sure that your organization hires a diverse group of people as well. The other thing that I want to mention, Colleen, you mentioned I have a podcast. One of the things that I tried to do in my podcast is I try to bring on people from diverse backgrounds, from underrepresented backgrounds, because again, like I'm in a position where I can elevate people's stories. So I want to be able to continue to elevate people's stories and introduce people to the community that would normally not get a voice. And I think that's really important. And then final thing, which is, if we have the opportunity to do speaking engagements or be on podcasts or be on panels, if you're up for it, I would encourage you, especially if you're from an underrepresented group, I encourage you to do those things, because showing up tells other people who are in a similar situation, like, hey, that person looks like me. I can do this too. And I think that's the most important thing, is being able to see people who look like you.
Adriana, I liked how you brought up the learning to be able to have this diverse group of people in your team. And it's not just about like you wanting it, it's the people up the like hiring managers and anyone else who has the ability to hire these diverse group of people. And I'll add on to that. It's also getting to know these people, and not just to like hire them just to hit a stat, right? It's getting to know them at a level that they can feel empowered to contribute back. And I think that really does make the difference. And yeah, I'm just wanting to second that.
It's awesome. I just wanted to give a shout out to the viewers and who are commenting as well. I see Travis Johnson, and thank you, and hello from New York from you. Fernando from Spain, awesome. Scott Rigby, thank you for joining us. Mohammed from Paris. Ashkanasha, if I ruined that, I am so sorry.
Akansha.
Thank you. She's joining from India. Ashwin from the Netherlands. And oh my God, Kunal, all my favorite people. Thank you. You're one of our favorites as well. And okay, but I do encourage, if you have any questions, hey Bart, nice to see you too. Please post them in the comments, because this is an important conversation, and these lovely people are really making some really good points. And then if we want to continue with that topic, there are other topics I'd love to hear more about. What do you think is the best way to create opportunities for future generations, for people, BIPOC professionals, and looking back on our careers, what kind of advice we would give to offer someone of color who's just starting out in tech? Because tech is important. We want it to stay, and we want it to see more people that look like us.
I'll go. I'll just say that it's always do it. Put yourself out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
People are watching, people are reading, and the more consistent you are as a person of color, the louder you become, right? It's not about increasing the volume. It's literally being consistent and showing up wherever you can to any kind of event, even these kinds of events as well, whether you're going to participate on that panel or you're actually going to be an audience member. By showing up, it really shows that you care. Like it means that you're willing to take that time out of your schedule just to demonstrate that you care, whether you're a person of color or Black or Indigenous, or you're even an ally, right? Showing up is half the battle. The other part of it too is amplifying other people's work, right? If you see someone that's, part of that BIPOC community, amplify their work too, right? Take that extra step to just not only like it, but repost it wherever that piece of work shows up, because it goes to your network, right? And then your folks in your network get to see some of the great work in that's, thriving in your network alone. The last thing I'll add is, I did 2 Coop huddles last year and the year before. And, you know, one thing that I noticed is the success came out of something that Adriana said. You said it, right? Like if you have a very diverse team, your event, whatever it is, will be extremely successful. And to me, that's what made Kupuddle successful. I didn't even think about, you know, the fact that we had such a diverse group until I started to look at the pictures. I started to realize, you know, who's been contributing in so many different ways. That goes so far. So I encourage you, if you're running an event, you know, really think about the diversity in your organizational group. Think about how you can include others to be a part of that cause and really spread that awareness too, because it's the little things that really tend to add up and have significant impact down the line.
Anybody else on that topic? Sure.
I would second what Marina said about amplifying other people's work. As somebody who oftentimes, especially when I first started giving talks, is a very difficult push for me to actually submit a CFP. The first time, to be completely transparent, the first time I got a talk accepted, I did not submit the CFP. It was submitted for me by Brad McCoy. He submitted it in my name with himself as a co-speaker, and then just blatantly did not prepare anything and kept telling me, yeah, will you get started? So that I would feel confident enough that I was capable of giving that talk on my own. At the time, it was an incredibly uncomfortable and overwhelming experience. Now, looking back, I am so thankful to him for doing that. It was life-changing and career-changing, to be frank. But at the same time, after doing that, the next time I submitted a CFP and it got accepted and it was my own and it was just me, I had been involved in organizing a small conference and we had struggled to find speakers that were women or diverse in any way, shape, or form. And the very first thing I thought was, oh my gosh, I'm the diversity speaker. And that stuck with me the entire time until I actually gave that talk, and it did not go away until Marino shared my talk, and then somebody from his network said to me, that was really a great talk. I learned this and this and this from you. Had he not amplified that talk, I would have continued to think, oh my gosh, I was just the diversity speaker, and I probably wouldn't have submitted again. So those small
What was that talk, by the way, if you don't mind telling us?
Yeah.
The first talk I gave at Rejects, you shared the recording of my Rejects talk about bridging the gap between dev and ops with policy as code or something. And it was you and Tim Banks. You both shared the recording of that talk. And I got feedback from people who didn't look anything like me. Were saying, I learned this and this is a really great talk. Otherwise, I truly am not sure I would have continued to submit. So those small things are not small to the person that you're helping and that you're amplifying their voice. And the other thing that I think I'd like to second in what Marino said about getting out into community and that representation is important. It's not just the cloud native community or the tech community that you're working in. It very much is go back to your secondary school or your primary school. Create an event there when you're home on the holidays, when you're doing other things. Go to schools that are in your area. Talk to other people. In my particular case, also, I'm a mom. There is a stigma around being a mother, which is very unfair because men also struggle with balancing their life with their children, but dads are rarely considered. This is very much a stigma on mom. She's not going to show up. She's going to be overwhelmed. She's going to take too many days off. There's so many things. But I spend a large amount of my time telling, especially people who are single mothers, you should learn to code because you can do that from home and you can combine it with your family life and you'll be good at it, right? There's a whole other set of community demographics out there that have nothing to do, as much as I love and am very involved in CNCF communities. Those small things that Marina was talking about, making big impacts, oftentimes are other underrepresented communities that are your neighbors or at the school nearby or wherever you grew up, and finding other people who look like you that aren't in the space and telling them about it. Because oftentimes people don't even know. They don't even know that there are opportunities to be in tech or how they would fit there. And also, I don't have a technical background. I got into the space through sales and marketing, and have moved into more and learned extensive amounts of tech because people have been very helpful. But there's also tons of space out there that doesn't have to be technical, where other people can fit and still bring the impact of their diversity and their different backgrounds into this space and make a difference. And so I think in terms of representation at company levels and other things that we can be doing, we can look at other people who are around us that might not be in technically backgrounded, but are doing other things with their life, and tell them about opportunities to work in companies and bring their skills that might not be technical, but also bring their life skills that are representative of underrepresented groups in the space.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And based on current events, we have to push harder and fight harder with the scaling back of inclusion and diversity. So keep that in mind when we're sending out those messages to not only, like you said, the tech industry, but any industry where we show up, and we want to make sure that we're here and we're not going anywhere. There is a question from DV. Are there any CNCF projects focusing on AI-driven solutions for cloud-native challenges? Now, I'm not sure how to answer that, but can anyone possibly respond to? I'm thinking cloud-native challenges as it relates to what we're talking about. But if there's something that I'm missing, please let me know.
I'm not fully understanding the question either.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we can get back to you.
If DV can,
yeah.
if DV, if you can put a little bit more context, that would help.
That, or DM one of us on LinkedIn if you'd like to, and we could probably help you with that answer. But we are hitting the 8-minute mark, so go ahead, Will.
Colin, I would like just like to say something really quick. For those, I mean, we want to give a tip to people to be more successful. I think the very first thing that would help is get comfortable being uncomfortable, because being out there, putting yourself out there in the middle of the conversation, in front of an audience, even a project within an organization, sharing your idea, which you should always do, it's uncomfortable because we are challenged. When we are challenged, we get raw feelings, and when we get raw feelings, we sweat and we become smelly. But it's okay. It's all right. It's part of the success. Falling and being smelly is part of the success. So you should get comfortable that sometimes when you work hard, you sweat. So you just do it. Just keep it, and find people like Marino said, like Adriana, like everybody said. Find people that look or think it like you, and ask for help.
Yeah.
And the BIPOC is a great place to ask for help, because we all want to help.
That's true.
That's all.
Really, really wonderful words of wisdom, Will. How about Mark? Do you have anything you want to?
Yeah, definitely. Just to piggyback off of Will, the BIPOC channel is growing, and I think that there's potential to be able to gain a lot of insight from people that can be potential mentors, or that you can just ask questions about navigating the CNCF cloud native space. My story with CNCF is, I think roughly 3-4 years ago, I kind of navigated it through just being with a company that I got exposed to a lot, which is really cool. And I met people that looked like me who said, hey, you should check out CNCF. And I think that spark was the one of the best things that happened for my career. And I'm able to meet more people on the panel that listening to everyone's story truly has inspired me, and I'm sure people listening too. So yes, definitely check out the BIPOC channel as well as the other channels in the Slack, and I'm sure that you'll start to realize how you can be a part of that community.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. If you did not know already, our wonderful viewers, that CNCF does have the Slack community channel, BIPOC, with how I got to meet these beautiful people, well, the new people like Mark and William. So if you haven't already, please join. It's a great group. And this is how this happened. So we have 4 minutes. Did anybody have any last words before I close out? Okay. No, this has been a great group. I mean, thank you. I mean, it's a very insightful, engaging conversation. I have to tell you guys, the last couple of days were a little bit a lot and sort of depressing. And I like getting together with people like you to bring me up and make sure that I know there's always going to be hope no matter what, and keeping that mindset. So I do really appreciate this. I appreciate the Cloud Native community, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, for making this happen on their platform. Catherine and Libby, you're awesome. And I look forward to more events like this. Again, insightful, engaging conversation today. Having these conversations, I mean, we're going to take action to address the challenges that BIPOC professionals face. And of course, all of you for joining us today. Thank you for your support. And don't forget, of course, to, if you can, join the Slack community. Let's keep this conversation going, whether it's in your workplaces or your communities. We all have a role to play in building more inclusive and diverse tech industry. So thank you again. And we look forward to seeing you at our next event.
Please join us at KubeCon. We're all going to be there.
Oh,
so
yes.
Come find us. Come find us.
Yes, I suspect that most of you will be there. So that's awesome.
Yes.
And that's Europe and North America. Europe is in London and North America is in Atlanta, of course. Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. We still have 3 minutes to spare, but it's up to the CNCF. Does anybody have any last words of advice?
I have one thought one inspirational thought to leave with. If you ever question whether or not you belong, you do. Someone invited you to be here, and that should be that's reason enough. You belong here. You deserve to be here.
That's awesome. That's inspiring. And I want to mention, thank you, Scott Rigby. Just thank you so much for generosity and your perspectives. It's just shitty out there. We need to band together. I hope I don't get any FCC fines or anything for saying that, but I appreciate your honesty. I really do. Okay. With that in mind, thank you again, and I will see you at the next event.